Hi, Dr. Edwards. I just wanted to show you my sequencing activity on my Mastery Matrix. We did it on the first 3 chapters of a chapter book we're reading called Winter of the Ice Wizard. The first level is what I did is I put them in pairs. I gave them a sentence strip with 10 main details, and they had to, as a class, figure out the sequencing in the correct order and place them on a sentence strip holder. The second level is I gave them the same details on a sheet of paper. They had to cut it up and put them in the same sequencing order, but they also had to separate them from before they found the ice castle to after they found the ice castle. And so they had to categorize them into those 2 different categories. Then on the third level, they took 4 main details from what I gave them, and they created 2 more. They brought their ideas together, critiqued all of their new details to make sure they're main details, and then they put it into a summarizing comic strip, and they created a comic strip for me. And here's some of my work.
So this is the DOK.
That is a picture of all the sentence strips put in a sequenced order. They really had a fun time with this, but it was really hard for them to put all 10 details in order.
Yeah, no kidding.
This is their group work. When the pairs were put together to cut up their sentence strips, to categorize them, and some of them even numbered them.
I'm so sorry.
And those sheets are the added details that each group added that they thought were main details that I had left out. And then I had them highlight the ones they wanted to pick for their comic strips.
So this is their comic strip.
Is
this a DOK3?
This is a DOK3.
Okay, okay.
They had to put it into a comic strip format and then once again sequence and make sure that it was a complete summary of the first 3 chapters.
So each picture had to depict what the statement was?
Yes,
Okay.
each picture depicts each statement or
Okay.
detail.
Okay, one more thing before we leave. Oh, those are pretty good pictures. Okay, last thing. Mrs. Edwards, how did you decide which one was Mastery and which students would get their work out on the wall?
The students that gave me a complete summary of the first 3 chapters within their comic strips are the ones that I chose for Mastery. I felt like if they gave me a summarization of the first 3 chapters and it was in the correct order and that their pictures were depicted as well as their words depicted the main detail, that's what I considered as Mastery.
And did you do this with all 4 of your classes, or you did this with just your homeroom?
I did this with all 4 of my classes.
Okay, excellent, excellent work. Thank you again.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
Hello, Dr. Edwards. It's Nicole White. I teach 3rd grade math. I did my Mastery Matrix on the everyday math unit that was coming up on place value, input and output boxes, which is multiplication and division, and also their decimals. It was just an introduction to the unit decimals, so students were starting to learn to compare decimals and rank them in order. So it was nice to be able to use the Mastery Matrix and use the different type of vocabulary words that they were going to see, such as intervals, rank, order, so on and so forth. With my Mastery Matrix, I decided to hit the 3 specific skills that were discussed in the unit, but I did it vertically. So for each DOK 1, 2, and 3, it was a base level of that specific skill and raised up to a 3. So I only did 3 specific ways of doing that specific skill. So trying to get kids more knowledgeable and aware of what was going on with those type of skills. What I did, in the past, I had started at the top and worked my way down and had used that as my DOK Fridays, where we just changed the numbers a lot so the kids were getting used to how to do DOK 3s. And I would take 2 to 3 days to do a specific DOK, whether it was a 3, 2, or 1, just so the students were getting more used to doing the matrices and being more aware of the type of vocabulary, what justifying evidence, and so on and so forth mean to them. So with this one, what I decided to do was, being as I was able to integrate it into my unit so well, I used it as an exit slip. we would go through the unit, and this was, sometimes it would be a STAR assessment. With everyday math, something within the lesson is looked at as a focal point for what students should be able to master at that specific time. So we started at the level 1 with intervals. They had to state what the rule was. So normally we say state the rule, but in this case I was able to state the interval, and we were able to discuss what different synonyms were used for the word rule. So it was really nice to be able to get into this vocabulary and discuss it. With my DOK2, the rule was there, but they had to apply the rule, and with input and output box, it's very difficult for students to work backwards. In this case, this is what they had to do. When it says divide by 2, it's dividing by 2 on the input side. They had to recognize that scale and be able to work backwards. So if it was divide by 2 on this side, they had to multiply by 2 on the other side. And then when I went back down to my DOK1 for my decimals, they had to rank them and put them in order from least to greatest. And one of the specific skills that we were really working on was having students write them up and down and being able to align them by the correct place value. And that is one of the skills that students are able to show you on some of their work that I'll show you here in a minute. The second one, they had to display a number based on its value. And the third one was, there are 2 different answers. They're both correct, and they had to justify and produce a similar pattern based on ways that they could both be correct. The DOK1 for my ranking numbers, putting numbers in order as well, was using a ruler type of frame and putting decimals where they were positioned correctly. They had to also, for my LOC2, be able to add fractions. One was a decimal, the other one was a fraction. This was a whole number 2. And then construct a number line and show how they add those 3. So they were doing a lot of jumping back and forth, which was nice. And the last one that we weren't able to do was being able to compare decimals to a fraction if it was greater than, equal to, or less than a half, and then be able to defend with pictures. Looking at our student work, the students really did well. A lot of the input and output, stating what the interval was, there's not really a whole lot of work involved. But on my LOC2, my students, at the beginning I always called it DOK, and we always do our DOK Fridays. And then when we started moving to the LOC based on what the State Department was wanting to call it now, my students are reverting back to DOK. They don't really like the word usage of LOC, so you can basically see that here. With the fraction on the timeline, the kids did really well putting the decimal where it goes on the ruler. And if you move this way with me, this one is the one, this was a new skill that we introduced during this beginner unit. And as you can tell, we do code text with what's important. And students are able to line up their decimals and show you how they do rank them and from least to greatest. And let's see, here's another one where they were able to show how they would do it, marking out the first number and then going to the second based on the decimals being aligned correctly. And I did try to explain to students that even though we do show our work out on the wall and we are very proud of it, this is also a learning experience for younger and older students. So if there is any way that by showing our work that we can get them to understand how to order or rank numbers based on place value, it would be a great learning opportunity for others. So I did, ask them to show work if at all possible. And sometimes when I was putting these on there, I did, cut that off accidentally. So the students really did well. How I determined what was going to be mastery was, this was an exit slip. It being that it was so well integrated into my units for everyday math. At the end, they would do this, and I told them anyone who was able to get it correct would go out on the wall. So it was more of an incentive to try and work hard and produce good work. In the future, I will try to manipulate it some so that everyone is out here. But again, I do have 90 students, so the wall is I can only have so much wall space. And from what I understand, we already are against code. So the students really enjoy it, and they really do look forward to our DOK or our LOC days, however you want to say it. And they do continue to code text like they need to, and that's just another part of learning vocabulary and integrating those different types of synonyms into their learning and into the lesson. So they really did well. I really liked being able to integrate this as an exercise flip, using it as just another component of my lesson as it was, because with everyday math, the spiral is there anyway, and a lot of the DOK is already built into it. So it really was just finding it and placing it in the right category, placing it in the right box. But using it this way, instead of using it as another add-in, something else we had to do, it was very easy to do for the students, and it really didn't take a whole lot of time away from, everyday math and the spiral that it produces for second graders all the way third and fourth graders. So it really works well, and I really enjoy it. So we continue to do our DOK Fridays, and hopefully we'll see more work out on the wall. Thanks again.
Good. Do a couple more of her work here. So again, look at that mastery matrix. Down to this one.
This one, this LOC here is students having a 2-hour delay and having to create a schedule based on the amount of allotted time they have outside of their specials and their lunch, of course. They have to determine how much time they're going to have for each class and then make a schedule based on the allowed amount of time, equally sharing their 4 classes. So they looked at me and scratched their head and thought, well, the schedule's already on the board. But I changed the times around so that it wasn't, we were getting here at, 8 o'clock. We were starting class at 9. Then, what time was it? We were doing it at 15-minute intervals like their CSO is required for calculating elapsed time, rather than doing it in an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 30 where you're going to be changing hours a lot. We just try to do it in the 15 quarter-minute intervals. So it really worked out well, and the kids really enjoyed it, but that one really was a tough skill. I mean, any adult could have trouble with that one anyway, but they did really well on that one. It was just too big to put on the square.
Definitely. Let's see, just multiplication's not on that one, right?
What'd you say?
Multiplication charts.
Yeah, that's their multiplication. I still have some more pictures that have to go up there. The kids are starting to come back with orally saying their multiplication tables. I've got, 5 more that got to go out there.
Very cool. Very good. A couple white
I'm
ones.
starting to get tired, don't they?